Hi folks, Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about socialist, communist, the hardcore ideological Soviet type communists, the work practices and how they ensured there was always full employment. Now, what was viewed during the Great Depression as something of a miracle was when people visited, say, with going from the United States with unemployment of 25% plus, they'd go to the Soviet Union, Soviet Russia, in the 1930s and find that there was no such thing as unemployment. Everybody was working, everybody had a job, nobody was living on the street, nobody was going without food. They may not have had a adequate or sufficient diet, and they clearly didn't go and look at the starving farmers in the Ukraine, but as a result of the Holodomor. But the various Western people were rather impressed that unemployment was non-existent. And depending on how you want to look at unemployment, it was. Now, I used to notice this traveling around to third world or even semi-socialist type countries outside of the first world. I remember watching a small, if you like, a town hall, a community hall getting built in this town or village, really on the outskirts of a big city, and I was there with some other people doing, I can't remember what it was now, but I remember watching that the entire village turned out to lay the bricks, which had a lot of curvature there. I don't know how long that building would have stood up, but the entire village, it turned out, they were literally shoulder to shoulder, the people. The bricklayers had to sort of keep their elbows into their body to put the bricks down. Now, the bricklaying, the actual final placement of the brick was regarded as a prestigious job. So that had to go to the son of the tribal chief, who knew nothing about building or laying bricks, but it was the prestige, and he's entitled to that job as a prestige thing. And because of his connections, his family's being on the tribal elder council or whatever it was. So I guess to build the bricks had been dropped off. They're on the back of some truck. I don't know how the truck actually made it there. It was such a clapped out thing, but anyway, it did. And there was a human chain to pass the bricks, so they were passing one brick at a time, again with elbow room only for the people standing. As many people as you could push into that process they had. And again, anyone in any prestigious or had any prestigious entitlement was doing the main sort of frontline gig there. So this is very much how communism worked in part. Now, when communism first started off, people were employed on piecework and they were being paid bonuses for higher rates of productivity and so on. Now, as the population increased and more people moved from the country areas to the city areas, then they had a kind of a surplus of people in the cities, even though they were industrializing, or in case of the Soviet Union, industrializing. Then they had to, how are we going to find work for all these people? Now, people originally wanted to do piecework and productivity work because the harder you work, the more money you made. But only the very privileged ideological elite could go and spend money in shops that had desirable goods. Otherwise, you had the common people shops that were allocated items, food items or anything allocated items, and otherwise you just waited in a queue, which could be for bread or milk or anything at all. So having extra money really meant nothing. And if you had extra money, the government would heavy you to spend to buy government bonds and those types of things, so that you didn't really derive any material benefit from engaging in piecework in a factory, on how many widgets you made or or any other form of productivity-related income. So that fell away for two reasons. One is you had nothing to buy with that money, so why bother? And the other thing is that there was now a surplus of labour increasingly. It went backwards a little bit after World War II, but by the late 1950s, it was back into labour surplus again. But just having a look at how do you keep this many people employed. Now, in Eastern Europe, which is under Soviet communist control, they all had communist governments installed there, and they were mostly much more advanced, particularly places like East Germany and Czech Republic, that sort of thing. They were much more advanced than the Soviets were in Russia. So they had a much more advanced economy. So when communism was imposed on them, it was a retrograde step because they were otherwise quite inefficient, or had been quite efficient economies in the capitalist sense. But now they were going to become communist, and everyone was going to share in the socialist paradise. But here's the thing about socialism and its costs, and I think we're going to be facing this we're facing it now in the West, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But so here's 10. Here's a company that delivers things around the city in a communist country. Now they've got 10 drivers, but they've only got one truck. Why, you ask? Well, no one's allocated any more. If you ask any questions about you want more trucks, maybe you're a fascist, counter-revolutionary, possibly a Nazi. So you got to go carefully here. And why buck the system anyway? Because if there's only one truck and 10 drivers, you only have to drive the truck for half a day a week. Your job's done. Now you have to attend, so you have to be in the depot. So you can't just skive off and stay at home, or I don't know, go to the beach or something like that. You have to be at work, but you don't have to work once you're there. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is be there and do your half day a week. So you might ask, well, why don't they just get more trucks, more delivery vans, and then everybody can be out delivering things? But they didn't have that much to deliver. So if they did that, then they would create a choke point or a bottleneck somewhere else in the process that another political operative would have to deal with. So from an ideological sort of equality and equity perspective, hey, I only have to work half a day a week. What's wrong with that? The rest of the time I sit in the office or in the depot, bored out of my skull. But that I still get enough food rations and money to live, and I can start work at 9, I can finish at 5 or whatever the hours might be, and I can be home for dinner by 5:30, and life may be boring, it may be pointless, but it's got no stress in the sense that I have to work hard, or I'm worried about a performance evaluation, or worried about how many deliveries I make, and so on. And the same could be for people who are on the cleaning crew at a factory. There might only be one mop and bucket, but there could be 10 cleaners or 7 cleaners, or whatever. But only one can have work at any one time. Now you don't have one person to show you up. So if somebody says, "Well, I'll work all day with a mop and bucket," no, hey buddy, no, you'll show me up if you do that. You'll make me look bad. So you do your half day, or your whatever it is, your allocation of hours. Then you give the mop and bucket to me, and I'll do in a few hours. Then the next guy, and so on. So no one's actually employed. One person could have done the job, and if you look at, say, things like say the railways in Romania, to Bulgaria. So let me say Romania now. The mileage, the railway track mileage in Romania was a tenth, less than a tenth of what it was in Germany. but the Romanian railways employed twice as many people as the German railways did. Now, in the German railways, everyone actually had a job to do. This is like the old West Germany, but everyone actually had a job to do, and they had to do it efficiently and effectively, and the services had to be delivered at an affordable cost to the public, and the railway company had to at least not lose money, and so on. So there were various forces at work to create and produce some sort of level of efficiency, not simply efficiency that workers are working hard, but efficiency on the plant and equipment is being utilised and upgraded. Workers are being trained on new technology, and all the things that go into making an effective service delivery, and all the underwriting, the mechanical and electrical and other organisational bits that go into that. But the Romanian railways was there not to do any of those things. It was there, sure, there were trains, and I guess they kind of got around to things in the end. But in terms of trains running on time or reliability or anything like that, then nobody cared. But they still had twice as many people as the German railways. Now, that meant that in effect, that the per mile of track, the Romanians were employing 35 people per mile of track as against one in Germany. So that gives you an idea of the scale and differential in employment, and how employment was done. So when you see that the communist countries, the hardcore communist countries, had zero unemployment, that's how they achieved it. Those are the means. If they'd become efficient and so on, then the unemployment would have been high. If they looked at efficient businesses, then they'd have been closing them all down, and so on, or engaging in radical restructuring to achieve that. Now, even if you look at the unification of Germany, for example, the cost of unification, the East Germany, in 1991, reunifying with West Germany, or the early 90s, the cost of that ran into, it exceeds $1 trillion. Now, East Germany had maybe, I think 18 or 19 million people. It was the most efficient satellite of the Soviet Union. All the others were either were much less efficient, or so less efficient that they didn't rate a mention. So the German one was the most efficient, and yet they were easily 40 plus years behind the West technologically, organisationally, and in every conceivable way. And the cost of upgrading East Germany to be the standard of West Germany, the cost of it easily exceeds $1 trillion, $1 trillion US. So that'll give you an idea of the scale of it, and even today, that updating and modernising isn't complete. But there are people, and I've spoken to someone recently from Eastern Europe, and they remember, as younger people, the communist days, and some of them yearn for it. Not all. The more enterprising and energetic don't, but for the people who had no ambition, they couldn't be bothered to acquire any expertise or special skills. They just wanted to live like zombies day to day. And there's a decent, there's always going to be a quarter to a third of any population are going to be happy with that. Then those people yearn for the days of communism, and just for the absolute certainty of life. Everything, certainty was guaranteed in that sense, and provided you did nothing, you didn't talk politics with anybody. You lived a simple zombie life, going to and from the factory, only really working a few hours, and the rest of the time sitting around, that sort of thing. Then your life was utterly predictable, and so why not why not live a life like that? And the benefits of it are being the absolute certainty and the low stress in terms of, again, having a performance evaluation or something like that. Ideologically, you could be evaluated. Are you a good communist? You could get that, but your work wouldn't be. Provided, again, you turned up. The amount of work wasn't the issue. You had to turn up, and sometimes, by the way, the penalties for not turning up were quite severe. If you don't, so if you come late to work 3 or 4 times in a row, you can be up for a prison sentence, for example. So they were quite particular about that. But once you're at work, no one seemed to give a shit whether you did anything worthwhile or productive, which is, seems rather odd. So how does that tie in with today? Now, if you look at the amount of affirmative action jobs that are being handed out, and the incredible numbers of people in human resource and diversity departments, and gay lesbian support departments, and migrant support, and so on. This burgeoning and massive sector, which is where all the gender studies, lesbians are going to find jobs. When you look at how ideological the people are there, then they don't produce anything or create anything. They appear not to do any work. So it's just a bunch of women, sitting around talking ideological nonsense, and just like young girls playing doll's house. That's all it is. And these people have no idea of productivity or producing something worthwhile. None, as indeed did the communists of that Soviet era, and elsewhere. It could be China, it could be anywhere. It's North Korea. Like the unemployment in North Korea is 0, but that's only, again, because they've got masses of people sitting around doing fuck all. So I see that with the ramping up and the ramping up again, and then ramping up on top of that of the mass immigration into the West, I can see that we're going to have more and more and more people, but the amount of things to be done is going to decrease. There isn't a lot to be done. The need for all these people isn't increasing, but the amount of people they're shoveling in the door is increasing. So we're going to have to subdivide work amongst the existing population, and when skills are discarded entirely and people just run off job checklists, which is where we're heading fast. Anybody can do any job. Just give them a checklist. Do they need to know what they're doing? Of course not. Just give them a fucking checklist. Be done. That's it. And we're even getting that now with doctors and all sorts of people. The next door neighbour's car wouldn't start, so they called in one of the car repair type places, and the guy comes out, and I was there talking to the neighbour, and the guy almost knew nothing. He just had a checklist he was going off. So it was just, then press button B, press button C, press button D, and that sort of thing. But he didn't really, you could see he wasn't able to analyse what the problem was. He just went through this lengthy checklist. So I think we're heading for that already in the West, where we're going to go to a situation where everyone's given a job and a universal basic income. So really the days when the Soviet Union fell over and communism was gone, well, I think we're going to come absolutely full circle back to that. And instead of an ideological elite, there'll be an ideological prison guard type group, the lesbians in the diversity department and so on. They'll be like the prison guards to keep the damn straight white Nazi fascist males in check. Then there'll be a small, very small elite who'll be richer than shit, and then the rest will be the peasants, the equivalent of the workers, and the work will just be subdivided into meaningless subunits, and everyone will get a universal basic income. I think that's where things are heading. You've been Tacitus today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.